to this. Yeah, I give you skin in the game by giving this free service, and you give a skin in the game by sharing with others, so others can learn from your experience. And
for sure.
So the first test is to make, people who are afraid that if they share their idea, somebody will steal it. It's a non-starter, right? So nobody steals an idea that has not been proven already. So I'm glad that you passed that first test.
Thank you. I think it's very important to share information. One of the things that I've learned is that even if you share your idea, a lot of people are not going to have the chance or the time to execute it, even if it's a great idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm good on that side.
Yeah. So, if I tell you my idea, you don't want to do my idea, you want to do your idea. So entrepreneurs don't go stealing each other's idea. They believe so much in their idea. Now, after your idea has been proven and it's a success in the market, then of course everybody will try to steal it. But we're working at the very early stage. So this is I'm Alberto. This is Anna. Hi, Anna. And this is the first episode of Startup Checkup. If it's successful, we'll do more of these. And so thank you, Anna, for participating. So I have, to set up the stage so that we all understand what you're trying to do, I have a few questions. So tell us a bit about yourself, your background. I know from LinkedIn that you're a software engineer. And you're planning to build a software product, right? So it's something in which you have some competency. But tell us a bit about yourself. Are you working now? Is this a full-time thing, a part-time thing? Where are you in the process?
Okay, so first, let me answer the first question. Who am I? So I was born in Mexico. I'm a lawyer. That's my first degree. And then after a little while, I want to automate judges to make decisions. Like AI was not a thing at that time. So biases didn't exist. Well, they'd exist, but not in software, allegedly. So anyway, I used to talk to a software developer and we didn't understand each other. And after a little while, I said, like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and learn how to do it myself. And so I did that. I studied computer science. And yeah, life brought me to Canada. So I moved from Mexico to Canada. Had a few jobs in startups, fell in love with like the growth, the ability to change so fast, to grow. And I think I've seen it all my life. Like my dad has his own business, and it felt like a calling from within. And so after a little while, I applied to a VC firm, and they do like interviews for, I don't know, like 2,000, 3,000 people. And I got in, and in there, the idea is to find a co-founder and then to think about ideas. They call them sandboxes. So basically what it does is that you need to think about the things that make you passionate about. And in my case, it was about real estate and fintech and logistics and e-commerces. And we ended up, well, I found a co-founder at that time. He left Metavine. But at that moment, we started working on the metaverse. And so I built the POC that it's done in Roblox. And basically what Metavine does is it's the integrator for you to be able to sell physical items of any kind through the metaverse, which could potentially be any metaverse. It doesn't have to be exclusively Roblox. And so the POC, it's in Domino's Pizza. And the idea is that you're playing a game. This can be applied in any immersive experience. So video games, metaverses, anything, right? The idea is that you're playing or you're talking to a friend and you're in the metaverse. And then let's say that you get hungry. So you go and buy a pizza, and that pizza is going to arrive to your home. But the same can happen for swag, or it can happen for toys or any other product. And that's how Metavine was born.
Okay, yeah. So for those, not everybody's here is as well versed as we are. So metaverse is kind of what Facebook and other companies are building. Roblox is like this very popular game. I think it's more popular with the young kids, right? So I don't know exactly the demographics, but yeah, I don't know many adults. But so the idea is that the kid is immersed in the game, he's hungry, and he feels like a pizza. And so in the pizza, he orders the pizza virtually in the game, but then an actual Domino pizza arrives at the door. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. So, and of course, pizza is one example, could be anything that kids do. Good. So, yeah, thank you for explaining. When I first heard about the idea, I thought that you were just selling, virtual pizzas. And I thought, okay, well, that, by the way, that may be big. I know that kids are buying virtual cars or virtual houses, but yeah, in the case of pizza, I thought, okay, that not much enjoyment out of that. So great. So you had this idea, and I saw. So you built a proof of concept that actually works. So how does that connect? Clearly, you don't have an agreement with Domino's yet, right?
No, I don't.
So it was just you just put a little virtual Domino store.
Domino's. Mm-hmm.
And and as the little characters go around, they see that and they could order the pizza. So so how far is that development, and what do you hope to do? And maybe this is a good time. All right, so I have a little script here. You read my books, so you know that I'm going to ask you, what is your XYZ hypothesis? Because right now I have a general idea of what your product idea, what the concept is, but nothing makes it as concrete as an XYZ hypothesis.
Yeah.
So do you have one drafted, or should we work on one together?
We should work on one together. So just to give you a little bit of context, I followed some of the rules in the Write It, but the way that this VC was established, we didn't follow many of those. One of those is the XYZ. We didn't do that. The hypothesis was super broad, but we can work on something better.
Okay, good. So I would say, and by the way, again, this is an experiment. This is our first session of this Zoom office hours. It's a little bit different. Normally, we would have a whiteboard. So it's possible that we're not able to get through everything today, right? Mm-hmm. I've allocated up to an hour, but that's fine, right? Because start with the first point, and then I'm happy to come back in a call. So actually, we follow. We develop this as you go through the next step. So yes, when I work with my students, whether they're college students or or professional big companies, I always say start with the XYZ hypothesis, because that's the thing that makes it most concrete. And also, when you go and pitch to VCs, if you go through this process, you will be in fantastic shape, because you have your rough description, but once you have a solid XYZ hypothesis, and then you show them how you tested it and the data that you got from it, then you're in fantastic shape. I mean, you're ahead of 99% of all the other people who pitch. So it's a very powerful way to communicate with data. So let's try screen sharing. So I have the XYZ hypothesis set up here, and tell me. All right. Why does it pause when I want to share my? Do you see my? You don't see?
Yes.
Yeah, but you do not see the my slides.
Oh, I see them. I see the XY. Oh, not all of them. Just.
Oh, you do? Okay. I don't know why it was saying it's not sharing. Good. So you okay. You're here. What do you see on the screen?
Say it with numbers.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I have to adjust my stuff. So we go from the use case description, which I think we did, right? We talked about somebody plays, they want to order a pizza, and they do that, or buy a pair of sneakers, or whatever it is. So with the XYZ hypothesis, we make it very clear, concise, and so the format, right?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
This was developed, the wording, I mean, it took me months to get it just right? Because it's a powerful formula, like F equals ma in physics, You know, it's so powerful. I said, you have to get it right. So at least X% of Y will do Z, where X% is your estimated minimum market share that you need for the idea to be viable. A lot of people, when they come up with their fantasy, 50% of Roblox player, you know, will buy stuff through me. You know, that's kind of a fantasy. The way you come up with the X% is try to think, okay, you have to have some knowledge of the market, right? So right now, let's say if you begin by focusing on Roblox, I don't know, how many players do they have?
400 million, I
Holy
think.
cow, yeah. Yeah, right. So the number could be minuscule there, you know, and the active player number probably is a fraction of that, right? So you need to come up with the X%, and then Y is your target market, you know, and eventually you would like everybody in the metaverse. But you know, Anna, one big recommendation to you. I know that you have big plans, but you always start small, right? Google started by indexing all the documents in within Stanford University, right? Facebook started with Harvard University students. Uber started just in New York. So you can start small. So for this first X of the hypothesis, because Roblox is a metaverse in which you've already done a proof of concept, I would say start with that, right? Then the world is your oyster, you know. Then we can say everybody, you know, uses Metavine.
Yeah, so Roblox has 43.2 million daily active users. And if I remember well, they were like 400 million in total. That doesn't mean that they're active.
That sounds
but it's a big number. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantastic. It's a big market. So and then why is your target market? So let's do it for now. Just focus on Roblox. You're okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
excellent.
For sure.
Yeah. So, you know, you want to conquer the world. And then Z is, you know, how you hope your target market engages with your idea. So I'll give you, you know, one example that I have. You know, one idea that you know, some of my students had in the past was a market for used phones, right? So it was described very generically. People don't know what to do with their used phone. And so, you know, usually they put them in a drawer, and then 5 years later it's just obsolete, and it's, you know, just goes and pollute garbage dumps. So they had this idea for something called sellaphone.com. And I told them, okay, make it concrete. And so they came up with this idea of at least 2% of people who buy a new mobile phone will sell their old phone on sellaphone.com. By the way, and also another good way of communicating your idea is to use an analogy. It's like Netflix. I don't know, for what else would you do? No, bad example. Or it's like sellaphone.com is like Carvana, but for phones, you know, or CarMax. So so using this format, what is your first pass at your XYZ hypothesis? And so we can work on that and refine that.
For sure. If I have to say my hypothesis right now, I would think about at least 5% of all users. So I would say, yeah, 5% of all users, active users.
Users of Roblox
will buy food through Metavine.
Okay, so I'll let you do the first pass, and then we'll criticize it, right?
Yes.
Through Metavine. Okay. So
I went too broad, right? Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna listen.
yeah, you did. Hey, but that's good, you know. So others learn. You read the book, so you already know what to do and what not to do. So you just told me that the daily active users, some number like 40 million.
Yes.
Right. So 5% of 40 million, it's a pretty big number, right? It's 2 million, right?
Yeah.
And let me ask you, do you really need, you know, that many people for your idea to be successful? Because those two words at the beginning of the XYZ hypothesis, at least, are very important. You know, hopefully you'll be able to get 80% of people to do it. But what do you think is the minimum, right? So let's say, do you need 2 million transactions a day for your idea to be successful?
No, I need just to prove that it actually works fine, and okay, I would say that less than 1%.
Bravo. Okay, yeah. So in fact, I would say let's be conservative, you know. And by the way, all ideas start like this. I don't like the color 0.1%. So I want to keep my colors straight. So you have 0.1%, which is, you know, which is great, and which also will tell us how many experiments we need to do, how many, you know, how much data we need to collect. So active user of Roblox, this is a good description. Now, I would say, because it involves money, you know, I don't know if you know, 8-year-olds have credit cards or they have the ability to do that. So is that something that needs refinement?
Partially. So they use a currency that is not, it's like a digital currency named Robux, but it's not crypto. It's just like a in-game currency, and they are able to buy them like anywhere as gift cards.
Okay, yeah. So it was one of the most popular gifts, you know, during COVID, right? For Christmas, for the parents, right? They give it. Okay, so they go to you know, to the store, or they go online and they give them 100 Robux, and those can actually be converted to physical goods.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I did it. Well, I kind of knew that, but I, you know, I didn't have it clear in my mind.
And
so
you
this
can switch it
eliminates the
back.
problem. Sorry.
And you can switch it back too. So if you earn in Robux, then you can switch that to USDs and then take that money out.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I guess I need to play Roblox. But again, you're the domain expert. I'm the one that helps to validate. So literally, all active user, because any kid who plays or adult, they will have some currency, correct?
Yes. Well,
okay, good.
Potentially.
So that's beautiful. That eliminates a problem. No need for credit cards.
Okay. No need for credit cards. But that doesn't mean that everyone has money in Robux. So that means that many people might have Robux in their account, but many of them might not.
Okay. So that's one of the things that you need to refine. But because your percentage number, would you say that the people that have some Robux or Roblox?
Roblox. It's ROBUX.
Oh, Roblox. Oh, okay. So Roblox, would you estimate that at least 50% of them have it? You know, is it a significant percentage?
I think that's a significant percentage, and I'm actually not sure how many might actually have any amount in their account.
Okay, so in that case, because you cannot refine your why, you know, your target market more closely, you can take a smaller percentage of the broader market. So you could say 0%, 0.1% of all users, or if you knew, for example, that half of them had Roblox, you could say, you know, 0.2% of all Roblox users that have some currency, right? But if you don't have more details about the market, you know, you can just make sure you keep a very small number. Now,
okay.
So we're doing well so far. Now, they will buy something through Metavine. So that's a place where, you know, I would like to see some more numbers. So anyway,
Okay.
it has to be a first cut, right? So if you have 0.1% of all users, which is what, 500,000, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for 500,000, and so we'll buy something, still a very big number, right? So you said 40 million active.
Yeah, 40 million daily active users.
Daily active user. So, you know, 1% of that will be.
And we can even make it like a little bit, you know, more specific, because this is worldwide, and the target audience that I'm looking for, they have to be today in the US or in Canada. And then eventually I can potentially expand, but those are the two places that I can service. So from those 43 million, I would say that half are in those two regions.
Okay. Well, so that's good, but you know that's hypo zooming. So it's good that you already want to narrow it down, but here it's okay to have a much broader thing, like think global, test local, right? Because if you're successful, eventually you will expand. You know, again, the XYZ hypothesis must be realistic, and you know, clearly, you know, Uber and Facebook and you know, Airbnb, whatever, Google, they want to index all the world information, that they want to connect everybody. So it's okay to have that in your XYZ hypothesis, right? That's a big plan. That's what gets the VCs excited, right? So yeah, by the way, I did the math. You know, when there's too many zeros, it pays to do the math. So it's actually, it's like 40,000, right? So for 40,000 transactions per day will be your 0.1%. And again, always check the numbers, right? Because we, you know, put them in a spreadsheet. We want to use numbers and make sure that they're right. So all active users, that's fine. So they will buy through Metavine. So here's where I would encourage you to have something with some numbers in it.
Okay.
So, and again, it could be your first pass. So if you have about 40,000 users per day buying something, you would say spend on average, you know, what's the average spend? Like,
I would say that it's around, well, for the things that we're going to be selling, the average is $30. But the average spending today in Roblox, it's around $15 to $20
per what?
Per transaction.
Oh, per consumer. Okay, those are pretty good numbers. So now say, okay, ideally you want to get to 30, but if you have 40,000 transactions per day, that's your 0.1%. And, you know, say, even if you keep it low, say at least $10, will that give you enough revenue to get started?
I think so.
Right, I would say so. I mean, 400,000 a day. Yeah, you're doing, if you get there, you know, you pay me back with some nice big Roblox pizza, right? So again, it really helps to be as conservative as you can with the hypothesis, because if the numbers are big enough, I mean, 400,000 per day is something that will get any VC excited.
Right.
That's like 7 times 4 is like 3 million. 3 million a week, so it's like roughly 10 million a month, and roughly $100 million a year. So you know, it starts to get to the point where VC says, okay, this is a real business, you know, and it can grow even bigger. So instead of saying buying through Metavine, we said we'll spend $10 plus on Metavine each day. Okay. So, by the way, Anna, I'm doing this first pass with you, right? So I do not have the domain expertise, but you know, I know that you had a business partner before, and it's always good. By the way, it's good to also have somebody with whom you work on these ideas, because now that you have it on, you know, on black and white, or you know, black and red and orange and green on paper. The great thing, right, is that now you can start thinking about those numbers and making something useful with this number, right? It's no longer this abstraction. And to me, this is one of the most powerful uses of the XYZ hypothesis, because it makes sure that you and your co-founders or investors are on the same page, right? For example, you and I, you said, well, let's spend on average of $30. I said, well, do we really need that much, right? We can lower our side. Maybe initially we sell cheap things, right? Maybe even at $1 we can get started, right? Just buy little physical goods, little books, you know, how to win at Roblox, you know, how to build. So this is the most powerful thing. So this is just my first pass. I do not know much, as you can tell, about this domain, but you know, as you go and work with other people, you can refine it, and maybe that number 10 needs to be 20, or it can be as low as 5, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So does this help? Is this the first time you had an XYZ hypothesis for your idea?
This is the first time, yes, and it helps.
It helps tremendously, right? So, if you come back to me, say I'm an investor, I'm doing due diligence for a VC, and you come to me with this hypothesis, and usually what I do, I would put a number. So this is about 400,000, right? So you put in parentheses. So 0.1% of all, and you said it's 400 million.
No, it's 43.2 million daily
Okay,
active.
yeah. So let's say 40 million. Okay. So I look at this and I say, okay, she knows what she's talking about, right? These are real numbers and they really help to convince, because honestly, I had no idea, 40 million active users is huge
Yes.
for a game, right? And then, and here, and you can put this, sometimes you can put this, as an appendix, average spend on Roblox is, 25, right? So you can put, you can put a little, appendix there. So you see how in a single page, I mean, this to me beats any business plan, right? Because I read it, I grok it instantly, and it's fantastic. So say, oh, okay, this is interesting, and then you can also project. So this translates it into, say, you have $10 times 40,000, that's 400,000. So we said it's about approximately 120 million per year, if this conservative estimate works, right?
Right.
So you see, and maybe you want to put this into slides, but in this single page, you give me all the information that a VC needs to decide whether the idea is interesting, right? The concept is interesting. It doesn't help them decide that you are the right team to carry it on. It doesn't, we don't know if it is true, but it's a first starting point, right? That's why it's called a hypothesis. So
right.
I'll take an XYZ hypothesis over any business plan or elevator pitch. I've heard so many elevator pitches that I leave the elevator and 3 minutes later I forgot, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Good. So this is okay for the first pass. We can move on to the next step.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, good. So we have an XYZ hypothesis. So we set it with numbers, but now we need to collect the data, right? So I maybe say, Anna, that looks pretty interesting. I mean, $100 million as a starting point, and if you're successful, God knows where it can go. This is pretty interesting. But how do you know that hypothesis is true? So we set it with number, and now we need to collect data, right? Because data beats opinion. And this is where prototyping comes in, right? So we need to hypo-zoom. We need to take your idea of world conquest, where 0.1% of all Roblox users will sign up, to something that you can actually test. And you already started, right? You knew, well, it cannot be the whole world, right? So I'm gonna concentrate on a small part. I guess the last time I did this, it was for an Asian company. So usually I have the US and Canada would be there, but you cannot get the idea, right? So you go from the whole world to ideally where you actually are located, right? So you zoom in, and zoom in until you have something that is very, very tangible. Now, this is in the physical world, right? But now you're in the virtual world, but that doesn't matter. You still want to do the same thing, right? Because at some point, you need to connect these virtual users with the actual goods, correct? Right. So you need Domino has to start accepting those orders.
The orders,
The orders. So the other thing is, you probably need to also hyper-zoom on all of the categories that are available to you. Right? So you mentioned pizza as an example. I don't know, it could be sneakers. I really don't know what other physical goods people would buy. But it's a very good opportunity for you to think, okay, what would be a scenario that's really likely to, that is most likely to succeed in this, right? So let me be let me show you a concrete example, then you decide, how to apply to your model. So remember the idea for sellaphone.com, right? So the big XYZ hypothesis was at least 2% of people who buy a new mobile phone, ideally throughout the world, right, will sell their old phone through sellaphone.com, and then other people can buy it. Clearly, that's a very big thing, it's a website. And since this was at Stanford, we thought, okay, if you had to test a hypothesis today, can you zoom in? Where do people go and buy phone, right? So there is an Apple store in Palo Alto, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can start focusing on that and zoom into this hypothesis that says at least 5% of people who buy a new Apple phone at the Palo Alto Apple store, you can even put a date, right? On January 7th, 2023, will go on sellaphone.com to see how much they could get for their old phone. Now you're going to start thinking, well, how do they know that sellaphone.com exists, right? What do I do? Do I intercept people going into the Apple store? Apple wouldn't be too happy about that, right? So these are all considerations that we'll take later. The point is to identify a product. So we went from all mobile phones, we went to just Apple phones, right? Why? Because it's the first experiment. You just do one experiment. If it's true for Apple phone, it's probably true for Android phones, right? For Samsung phones. So given that, how would you like to zoom in your hypothesis? And here, actually, the more you zoom in, the more helpful it is, because instead of having to make partnerships or even pretend partnership with a lot of companies, you can just focus on one particular product, like you had with pizza. So how would you like to zoom in for your first experiment?
Okay. So to give you a little bit of context on how Roblox works, people create their own game and their own little world. And that world can have multiple people at the same time. Some of them have a cap of 5 people. Some of them don't have a cap. Okay. So if I want to zoom in, it's not just about Roblox, but it has to be about a specific game.
I see.
And so one game that has an N amount of users, active users, then from that amount, I need to zoom in and say, okay, the only region that I'm going to be serving today is going to be the US. And then from that little circle, it's how I'm going to be able to do the experiment, I'm assuming. So that's the context. And
okay.
So now let me think. So at least it's a percentage DX, right? If I remember well.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So at least.
Oops.
Should we go with a full percentage, like a 1%?
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But by the way, people say, well, don't I have to use the same X% in the big XYZ hypothesis as in the hypozoom? And the answer is no, right? Because sometimes in the hypozoom, you make a smaller ask, right?
Right.
So 100%, no, 0.1% of people will buy a Tesla, for $40,000 or whatever. But you can say 1% of people will take a test drive in a Tesla, right? So you can modulate those numbers. And once again, the whole point here is to put some numbers. Doesn't mean that those numbers are right, but it means that they're testable. So when you actually go out in the world, you get to see, if they're real. So let's go with 1%. That's fine.
Okay. So I'm gonna say that 1% of I don't know how many people are gonna be inside a game, because each game depends on popularity. So some of them are gonna have more people than others.
So are there some where they have thousands of people?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, because otherwise you need to have a lot, a much larger percentage or a lot of game. So this brings us to a very interesting point: the sample size. Okay, so the smaller your percentage is, the bigger the sample size has to be. All right. So if you said, for example, 50% of Roblox users will sign up for for the service, or will buy something, I said, well, if it's 50%, heck, I can make do with even with 100 users, even less. Actually, I have a formula for this. I will give it to you in a second, right? Because if you expect every other person to do it, you don't need a lot of persons to either validate or invalidate the hypothesis. Make sense? Right? But if the numbers is very small, so if you say, okay, look, if it's 50%, and let's say we go and ask 100 people if they're interested, and then we get 2 responses, that's not enough. If the number is 0.1%, you clearly need more than 10 people or 50 people or 100 people, right, to just make the numbers correct.
Yeah.
So the formula, let's see if I write it here. It's for your sample size is this. You see this? Is it readable?
Yeah, I can see it.
So it's 1,000 over X. And that's the beauty of the XYZ hypothesis, right? Because everything, in the right, is kind of interlocks. So if you had 1%, you expect 1% of the market to take an action. Your sample size has to be 1,000 divided by X, so which is 1 in this case. So it's about 1,000. So you need to have at least 1,000 players in this game
at the same time, or in a day.
Or no, it could be in a day, right? And that's why you would refine. So on January 7th, in this game where there are 1,000 players, at least 1% will buy a pizza where you need.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Right? Because really, the smaller the number, the bigger your percentage, the bigger the market needs to be, right? So if I'm selling a Rolls Royce for $300,000, 0.001% of people will buy the Rolls Royce, right? Which means you need to reach a lot of people, or you really shrink down the market, and you could say 1% of multimillionaires, over the age of 50 will buy a Rolls Royce, right? So since your number is 1%, you need to make sure that you go in a world where there is enough people that that will buy it. And one interesting, the other way that you can go around it is, how many people do you need to ask, are you interested in my product, before you get to 10 people who say yes, right? So, because if you reverse the formula, you can say, well, I don't know what the X% is. I'm going to ask a lot of people until I get 10 of them to say yes. So let's say you ask 100 people, let's pick an easy idea. Hey, would you like to trade your phone with a cell phone? And you ask 100 people, you keep asking people. And then when you reach 10 people who said yes, you check out how many people you asked. So let's say that you ask 30 people, and out of those 30, 10 people said yes. So you had 30, there is a 30% interest, right? So this is another techniques. But is it clear that because your number is relatively small, most think about this. How many ads do you see on Gmail, on your browsing on each day? Can you estimate?
Oh, no. Of no. How many emails? No.
Yeah, how many ads in Gmail or stuff? It's like you probably see hundreds per day, right?
Yeah, they go to spam. I don't even look at them anymore.
Well, or not just mail, or just as you go through the internet, right? And out of the hundreds of ads, you probably click on even less than 1%. And even if you click, you'll buy less than 1% of the 1% on which you click, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it, but it works because the sample is so large, right? Because one of my friends said, when I started working at Google, said, I don't know how Google makes money. I never click on those ads. And I said, well, yeah, you don't, and most people don't, but just, enough people do, because you have 1 billion of users. If you just have 1% of them that clicks on 1% of the ads, that makes enough business. So that's one of the things that you need to understand about, in this Roblox world, because the same thing applies.
Yes, I'm actually going to investigate how many people or active daily users some of the most popular games have, because that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I don't know today the answer, but then that makes me think that that 1% has to be bigger, because if I want to use an average, I would say that at least 100% get into one game. And from that 100 people, I would be thinking at least 10 to 15% would be a good mark for me to sell pizzas, for example.
Yeah, but so you're starting to see that starts to be very ambitious, right? Anytime you get into the double digits for somebody, a company that you've never heard of, or a completely new service, that gets very ambitious. So one of the big lessons from today, the big takeaway, is that either you find a game that has tens of thousands of users, right, or at least thousands of users, or you need to do the experiment on multiple games and run it for a longer length of time, right?
Okay.
So the way I like to think it is, how many instead of users, so how many possible interactions have people had to buy the product, right? So just like when I see an ad, right? So there's 3 steps. I see it, I click it, right, and then I buy something. So the metric that you may want to use, and again, this is where, usually when I work, with big companies, we kind of refine, right? We start with the XYZ hypothesis and we refine the metric. So your metric may be, like there is a click view, ad views, how many people have seen the ad, right? And then how many people have clicked on the ad. So in your case, maybe the metric that you use is not how many users there are, but, how many players have seen the ad. So which I assume they must walk, virtually walk past the Domino's pizza store, or they must do some interaction, right? So maybe that's another way that you want to interact. So using that, maybe we hypozoom that hypothesis to a particular game and a particular product. So do you have a product in mind that you think you could actually deliver? A prototype?
So the product that I can deliver, it can be swag. So I can send, okay, zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
When they make the order, I get the request, and I can process the request either by integrating with the platform, that in this case, I don't have access to integrate with Domino's, but I can place the order literally myself. So there could be a way to do that too. And it doesn't have to be through the technical integration. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it could be potentially any product. As long as they provide me the information to where to send it to, I can send the product.
Brilliant. So do you remember what this type of prototype is called?
Oh, it's a
guy with the turban.
A fake door. It's a fake door? No, it's not a fake door.
Fake door, you don't deliver the goods. It's a guy with the turban playing chess. Remember that one?
I do. I mean, it rings a bell, but I don't quite remember exactly how was it.
It's called the Mechanical Turk, right? So, or some people call it the Wizard of Oz, right?
The Wizard, yes.
The Wizard of Oz. I prefer Mechanical Turk because I came up with that. So Mechanical Turk, people thought that they were playing this chess robot, but there actually was a person inside making the moves, right? So it was called the Mechanical Turk. And it was kind of a sensation because, this is like 200 years ago, before any robots. People say, how is it possible? So essentially what you're suggesting here is, I'm not going to build any of the infrastructure. If they want a pizza and I have the information, I order the pizza for them, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a Mechanical Turk or a Wizard of Oz. You're kind of behind the curtain. They don't know what's happening. It's something that you're doing. Of course, it doesn't scale, but it's great for proving the ideas because you don't need to make all those connections. You don't even need the deal with Domino's to do it. You may get in trouble if you use their logo, right? But you could just say,
yes.
As I like to say, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to take some risks, right? Don't do anything stupid or immoral or illegal, right? And maybe you just don't use the Domino's logo or the Domino's name. One way you could do it, again, if you do it locally, and I don't know, can you know where people are located in the real world through Roblox?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. Right. So you could actually make a deal. Let's say you're in Toronto. Is there a famous pizza joint in Toronto that, people know?
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I'm not aware of.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the big things. It's very hard for an entrepreneur to make a deal with the big companies.
Yes.
So, some of my students were coming up with this idea, beer for dogs, right? So it's not alcoholic, right? So they're not planning to get the dogs drunk, but they want. In fact, even pizza for dog was one of the ideas that they tossed around. So it's unlikely that you, Anna, will get access to Domino and get an agreement, right? Because they're just too big. But you could go. Let's assume there's a place called Luigi's Pizza. Okay, so you go to Luigi's Pizza, you talk to Luigi and say, look, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying this idea to deliver pizza in the virtual world. And, Luigi, is an old Italian guy, doesn't understand any of this. And said, look, I will order through this. People order pizza online. You don't need to understand it. And then I will come and pick the order. You sell pizza and, you deliver the pizza. I'm just going to be as an interim person. You just get to sell more pizzas. And small stores are much more likely to do this, right? So if your idea is to sell a pizza, you can, work with a small company, and so you don't run the risk of, upsetting Domino's by using. For
sure.
Which, by the way, you've already done it, kind of, right? But you didn't get right. You didn't get into trouble, and maybe they
no, because the project is private. It's not available for anyone right now. So it's ethical and protected. Yeah.
So by the way, Domino is also a client of mine. They're a very smart and innovative company. They would love probably to hear the idea. I mean, I haven't worked with them. There was maybe 3 years ago. But if you go to them with a prototype, and so you don't always necessarily need money from VCs to get your idea off the ground, right?
That is true.
If you find out that, people who play get angry and they really want pizza, and then you can just go and say, hey, listen, Domino, I did a small experiment here in Toronto, and, people order a lot of pizza. So you kind of modify the numbers and say, look, if we apply to is there a Domino in Toronto?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So you could say, look, if you advertise, if you sign up with me as an experiment, I can increase your orders by 30%, right? So they would be very interesting. You don't really need the VCs. Maybe you can just start as a service. And then you do this, and when you go to the VC, said, look, I already have a client, and maybe you get another client in another market. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's ice cream or maybe something non-food related. And then you can say, look, I've proven, right? People are okay buying this physical goods, and I'm a good service at delivering them. I've done it with Domino's, and they're expanding. So you have a lot of data to prove your idea.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
I need to prove it first.
Anna, I sat through so many pitches to VCs, and if everything is in thought land, right? Unless you've actually built something, it's very hard to get through, especially, right, if you're not, a serial entrepreneur, if you have, the background or the connections. They're going to say, this is interesting, but, how do I know that they're actually going to deliver it? They're asking them to take on a lot. But if you go to them and said, look, I already have signed orders, here I have an agreement with Domino or even Luigi's Pizza, right? I have proven, you go to a VC and says, I have proven that people playing, in the metaverse, specifically in Roblox, will actually order pizza, right? And pizza that they wouldn't order otherwise, but as they're walking around, they see the pizza, and they kind of get a craving, and I can deliver it. So that makes it very real. Otherwise, it's just thought land. Otherwise, you're just another person with a dream for an idea.
Yes. Now there's two catches to this. The first one, it's the terms of services in Roblox.
Yeah.
In which for me to deliver the pizza, then the person has to add their address, and that's not permitted today. And the second catch, it's that even if Roblox changes terms of service, there's a limited amount of requests that I can send outside. So that's going to limit the amount of transactions that I can make in a day.
Okay. So let's talk about the first one. If,
yes.
No, by the way, you see, once we go from Thoughtland to the concrete, you realize, because if you cannot prototype it, if you cannot do it on a small scale, then kind of good luck doing it on a big scale. So how would you get around the thing that, for your pizza example, if you cannot deliver, if you cannot know the address, how can you get around that?
I don't have the answer today.
Okay.
But I think that there has to be a workaround in which, for example, we can try a way that they don't send me the address directly so that we can protect the data. But I think that's the most important concern that Roblox has. If I'm thinking in their shoes, right? Or if I'm putting myself in their shoes. But I don't know the answer today.
Okay. So what we're learning, you're seeing the process in action, right? So
yes.
we had the XYZ hypothesis that helped to make things very, very concrete for you. And then, but it's still abstract, right? So you were in dreamland, your world conquest. But then when we come up to the practicality, and that, of collecting the actual data, getting the actual users, that's where things tend to break down. And now that's where you need to find a way around it. But the way we arrived at this process is, you've learned right now what the problem is, right? Just like the XYZ hypothesis surfaces the numbers, so you can argue about them. Now, this has surfaced the problem. And this is exactly the point of doing this, right? You have hypothesis, and then you say, okay, how are we going to test it? So, well, I cannot test it. Said, well, then how can we know that this works? So you've identified. So in our first session, you have identified something that in your example sounded great, like delivering the pizza, but now you found an obstacle.
Right.
I cannot get the addresses. So
I can, but eventually they're gonna turn it off.
That's
because it goes against their terms and conditions.
Yeah, which is understandable, right? Because a lot of kids play that game, right? So
right. And you need to be safe and protect them, of course, above all.
Yeah. So I think, Anna, we kind of reached a very interesting stopping point. As I said, I'm willing to go through this to the next step. But what we've done today is incredibly useful, because trust me, you don't want to find these things too late in the game. And when people think, oh, I got the VC money, I'm set for it. As I wrote in my book, the yellow one, this one, not in the other one. I thought when for my second VC-backed startup, we raised, $25 million, I thought that's great. We got the VCs, but it cost me and my co-founders and my employees like 5 years of our life, right? So the important thing is getting the VC money. If the idea is not the right fit and it's not going to work, is really not the price, because you basically committed to delivering something. And if you have trouble doing that, right? Along from the embarrassment, said, well, okay, we got the money. Oh, little problem. We cannot, Roblox will stop us from doing this, if we do it at scale.
Yeah.
You really need to identify all these things early on. And that's why if you get to the point where you actually have run the prototypes and actually have delivered the pizza, that, one of my favorite saying is, there are obstacles, we shall overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you've identified an obstacle, you need to overcome them, because if you were pitching this to me as a VC, and it all sounds great. And then you go and tell me, yeah, little problem, Roblox doesn't allow me to have these addresses. Then I thought, okay, how does the transaction from the virtual world to the physical world
right
happen?
And the question would be like, is that the only metaverse that I can use for those type of transactions, or can it potentially be built in other metaverses, or should I build my own? And those are some of the questions that eventually I'm gonna need to answer.
Yeah, well, and again, that's why the process is so useful, right? As you go from the abstract to the concrete. So building your own metaverse, something that would compete with Roblox.
Yes. Well, yeah. I think all metaverses are gonna compete in different scales, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but now you see, you're talking about a completely different idea, right?
Yes, it is a
Because if that
completely
idea
different
succeeds, you don't make money by selling pizza, but you make money by through Roblox. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so you need to give that some thought. And are there other metaverses that are more open? My experience is that people are very, very stingy with their data and the information, and you better go through their channel, otherwise they just kick you out really, really fast. Right? I mean, even in places like Reddit, right? If you go on a forum, I mean, some people say, "Oh, Alberto, yeah, I know exactly how I can market the product." I don't know, I'm selling, a pet care product. I'm just making this up, right? So there is a Reddit forum called for pet owners, and I'm gonna go there and post and and get the replies, and immediately they're kicked out by the administrator, right? Because I said, look, this is a forum for discussion. We do not allow self-promotion. So you need to find well, you can go and build your metaverse. That would be a completely different call, right?
I'm trying not to. I want to use. To be honest, I want to do integrations. I want to be able to integrate with everyone.
Right. So and that's what you should do, right? Because right now you're a solo entrepreneur, right? So you cannot build the world, but you can plug into existing into things that already exist, which means you must find a business or an environment where they actually want those plugins. Like, Amazon, if you want to sell thing and become an Amazon reseller, advertisement, you get the point. So does Roblox have a model for people that want to do things similar to what you want to do?
They do have something similar, not in the way that I built it, but what they do is that you can create models of virtually anything.
Yeah.
So for example, the Domino's store, it's not mine. Somebody else created that store. Okay. It is a 3D store, and I'm able to plug it into my world because they open it to everyone. So yes, there's an ability to do that. The question is, do they want to open their platform for those kind of businesses? And if the answer is yes, then we're golden. But if the answer is no, then we either find a workaround, or maybe that's not the place to start.
Okay. And what are some alternatives to Roblox these days?
You have Sandbox and Decentraland.
Okay. And do you know if they have different? They're probably much smaller, right?
They're much smaller.
Yeah. And do they know if they have similar rules?
That's something that I need to investigate, and then I need to do a prototype to make sure that I can actually build it there too.
Right. Well, I'm sure you can, right? So there's two things there: desirability, viability, and feasibility, right? So desirability, do people want it? Feasibility, can we build it? You're not building a time machine, right? So, and if you cannot do it, you can probably hire somebody who does, correct?
For sure.
Right. So it's just bits, right? It's just like,
yeah. And the one in Roblox, I built it myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's the same concept.
So it can be done. And the other one is the viability. Is it viable? Is it permissible? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. And that's where you need, different type of entrepreneurs take different risks. So for example, Uber started in New York City operating, I think they bought 3 cars, right? And they were operating as a limo service, but in a kind of illegal way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you remember, Uber operated without authorization, remember, in many cities and many countries.
In many
right?
cities and countries. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then they were revoked, and then they fought it. So that's one of my other slogans. If there is a market, there is a way. Right? For example, here at the San Francisco airport, for many years, Uber was not allowed, right?
Right.
But then people really wanted it. They said, look, I cannot afford a limo, or a taxi. Taxi from San Francisco to the airport is $100. Uber is $30. So enough people rebelled, and eventually, if there is a market,
there's a way. Yes.
Yeah. But the first step are the toughest, right? And so if you came to me or you went to any VCs with your idea, they have no question that you can build it. They need to know 2 things. Will people actually sign up and use the service? And are there any actual, oh, you're a lawyer. Yeah, I forgot. You're a lawyer. Right? So you understand, yeah, sometimes the legal issues are the main thing. How do you get around the various restrictions? So
yeah,
can I give you some personal advice, Anna, on your idea?
Yes.
So I'm stepping out of my role as validating your idea, right? So I'm not Alberto the write it. I am Alberto the entrepreneur.
Okay.
If you want to do this, probably it's because you would like to be an entrepreneur, right? You would like to have your own business. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're correct.
The real dream is not to sell pizza through Roblox, right? Even though that's kind of fun, but that's not your mission in life, to bring pizza to hungry gamers, right? That's right. So this is just an idea that you've landed on.
Yes.
Okay? And as we've discussed, as we've seen, yes, the idea sounds good, but there are many obstacles. Let me put it this way. The idea is bigger than you are right now. Would you agree?
Depends. Why do you think that?
I think because, all right, look, this could work, right? But the way to become a successful entrepreneur is to start with things where you remove as many obstacles as possible, right? Things that you can do. So sometimes people come to me with these, ideas. Well, I'm going to connect all the major, but this actually happened, right? And I'm not giving away any secret because it's kind of a crazy idea. I want to connect all the major drug manufacturers with the pharmacies. So instead of going through the middleman that take a 50% charge, I don't know, in dealing with pharmacy, they can do it directly, and we only charge 10%. And so this was 2 guys. I said, so are you in the pharmaceutical industry? No. Or do you have any connections, with Pfizer and all these big meds? No. Was your dad a pharmacist? No. So I said, what do you have? This is bigger, I know it's a big idea, but how the heck are you going to make it happen? I said, well, but we want to be entrepreneurs. And I would say, look, you got to start with something where you can put all of these techniques, the right it of prototyping in practice, in something that you can do, that you don't have obstacles, that you do not need permissions from other people, right? Because the more of those you have, the further away your ability to execute is, and the less likely it is that you will succeed, right?
Okay.
So remember, everything must start really, really small. And so if you say, well, Alberto, actually I cannot execute this today because I need to get the physical address, and Roblox will not give me the physical address, then I would say, well, so this idea is I don't want to say it's too big for you, but it's beyond you where you are at this stage.
Yes,
right?
Dependencies are tough. I can get the information. There's nothing stopping me from getting the address, for example. The only thing is that they're going to shut me down eventually when they notice if people are sending me their address, because there's ways to communicate. So you can literally have the text box and type down your address and send it. But yeah, dependencies are like you're saying, you're right. If you have a dependency and you require permissions, then that means that it's a little bit more difficult. than anticipated. But it's oh yeah, there are obstacles. You're right.
Yeah, and if you go and look at the companies that were successful and they really started small, they removed as many dependencies as they could, right? And especially you don't want to have two ways dependence. I mean, the worst case scenarios were, well, I need the agreement of the big pharmaceutical company and of the 10,000 pharmacists. I said, how are you going to do that? You have no connection, right? Or this guy that wrote to me, and I think I wrote about it in the book. He had this idea for a diaper delivery service. And, you know, it was like, I said, do you have kids? No. Do you have any experience in the diaper industry? No. I said, well, why do you want to do this idea? Do you really want to be in diapers? You know, what's motivating you to do this? So it's very important to match the idea to what your goals are, Anna. And since why not stay in the in the virtual metaverse, since there are people making money with ideas in there?
What do you mean? Like, can you elaborate a little bit more?
Like the guy who built the virtual domino store, I don't know if he sold that.
Oh no, it's for free.
It's for free, right? But there are people that are selling things, right?
Yeah, digital assets.
Digital.
They don't sell. Yeah, nobody sells physical items. But
no, that's what I mean, right? So I know I could buy, I cannot have a Ferrari in the real world, but maybe I can have it one in Roblox. And by the way, do you actually like Roblox? Do you play?
I do. I do like it. I think it's a very fun, interesting platform.
Okay. So, and do you know that there are people that make a significant amount of money, and startups built around that platform?
Yes, some of them are game development agencies, and they do make some quite money, 5 million, 10 million a year selling digital assets.
Yeah. So, and are there any obstacles for you in doing that?
No.
Okay. So I would say, if because you already have experience, you build this thing on Roblox. So again, this is not me validating your idea, because we try to validate your idea and we find out that actually the execution of the prototype becomes problematic on Roblox, right?
Right.
So we have a hypothesis that it's you really cannot test, because if you need to deliver 100 pizzas, say, for it to be viable, and probably after the third pizza they will shut you down, as you said.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it looks to me like you do not have a clear path to go from idea to XYZ hypothesis to to hypo-zooming and to actually delivering that. Which, by the way, hey, Anna, it's a great result, right?
It's okay. When
I bring you from Thoughtland down to Earthland, that's it doesn't feel pleasant. God knows how many great ideas I had, and then I thought, oh, okay, I guess this is not going this is not going to happen. But then you find the one that actually succeeds, and it's important. So the prototyping lesson, do you agree we ended today? You need to figure out a way around the restrictions, correct?
Correct.
Or find another platform that allows you to do it. Okay, so
I agree.
Your hypothesis is not testable. Therefore, anybody you go to and present the ideas are going to say, well, how are you going to do it? And they say, well, eventually we'll find a way. That doesn't.
It's a tough one.
It doesn't. Yeah. So, by the way, actually, you discovered this early. A lot of people go through the prototypes things. You have to do several experiments, and most of them, most of my clients with their first few ideas fail, but they fail quickly and cheaply, not in years, right? They fail in days. And so they keep refining the idea until they find one that actually works.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for that part. And the other part, again, it's in a different role, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. I think it's just to get started, right? If you want to score some successes, right? Whether you want to play new sport and thing, really start small. Say, look, right now in my spare time, I'm going to sell, I don't know, keychain on Roblox. I'm just making it up. I have no idea what people buy, right? or scooters, or give haircuts. I do not know the details. start small, using these techniques, still use the hypothesis, at least 2% of a Roblox player in this smaller world, will buy a keychain or a car or some kind of fun trinkets that I built. And then as you gain experience with that, you will learn a lot and you will get to pursue bigger ideas, because it's not just the roadblocks, Anna, it's the things outside your control, right? Which
Right.
includes, dealing with Roblox corporate lawyers, right, stopping you down, and getting Domino to agree to do with that. I mean, you could reach them, but it's so tough. And I would say, look, if you just want to be an entrepreneur, you start by doing small things. I started developing video games, right? So as I write in the book, my first thing, my dad loaned me the money to buy an IBM PC. I started doing video games, advertising on newspapers on those days because we didn't have the internet, and selling them for $29 a piece, right? But that gave me the first taste of being an entrepreneur and making some money. And then I kind of built up on those successes to get to the next level. But, do stuff where you do not have a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome. And remember, it's not failing fast, it's learning fast. So we learned pretty fast today before you spent more time on this. Well, before I try to sell pizza, I got to figure out how to get around these restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So I freed your very creative mind to think up of some ideas that will be more viable. So I hope it was useful for you, Anna.
It is. It is super useful. I think I'm gonna poke you with other ideas later. But yeah, the idea is to, like you're saying, to bring that idea from the La La Land to the real world and see if it works. Because it's as an entrepreneur, you can be spending a lot of time, a lot of money in something that you don't know if it's gonna work. And I think that's a dangerous path, in my opinion. So failing fast and being able to look at the obstacles, it's a really good thing for everyone to make decisions based on that, on the reality.
Good, you got it right. So the next time we're going through the process, you can go through it on your own. I mean, feel free to ping me with new ideas. But you know what I'm going to ask you at some point? What's the XYZ hypothesis? How did you come up with those numbers? And then said, okay, how do we prototype? How do we get our data today, right? And said, well, actually we can't, because the Roblox is going to stop us from doing that. Then okay, I should move on to an easier idea. It's just so tough to get something that the market wants, that you can make a profit at, that people will buy, and so you need to remove any obstacle that is not outside your control. But having said that, I think clearly you're smart, being both a lawyer and a software developer and all of that. And all you need to do is to find the right fit, and hopefully I've given you some of the tools and some ideas on how to go on that journey.
Thank you.
Okay,
it's
Anna,
been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. This has been fun. I think we went a little longer than the 30-40 minutes, but that's that's fine. So I will record it. I think we're okay with everything that we said here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we just kept it nice and legal. We didn't give out any ideas. If anything, maybe Roblox or Pizza Hut listen to this and say, hey, we would like to sell some pizza, so let's contact Anna.
That would be super cool. But let's see what happens. For playing.
Do keep in touch, and thanks again.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye. See you. I'm gonna have some pizza tonight. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.